Hi, hi, welcome to Kindness 2025, all about spreading kindness in this year where I don't know about you, but it feels like it's needed more than ever. So I have put together a series of events that are going to all be under the Kindness Unites umbrella, not just me talking. Lots of exciting kindness professionals and people interested in kindness talking throughout the year. And then our big Kindness Unite Summit will be in November the 13th, 2025. And so I'm Helen Rimmer and I run the Kind Brave Leader, and everything I do is underpinned with kindness. So today we're going to look all about how we can make kindness a habit, how actually that's really easy, how kindness transforms workplaces and our lives, and also some strategies to build some connection with kindness and how it ripple out amongst our wider community. But before we dive in, I'd love to know what you think, well, what kindness means to you. And you can put your answers in the chat. And if you're watching this on record, you can add it as a comment on the video. Yeah, what does it mean to you? What do you think when you hear the term kindness? Empathy. Yeah, that comes up often, and I think it's really important. Giving. Yeah, yeah, totally. So powerful. Helping, understanding. Yeah. All things that really are important in our lives. Compassion. Yeah, totally. And so much the fabric of what can knit us together, supporting, and then anything else coming up. I mean, there's no real one definition of it. There's a popular one by Curry, which is kindness is actions for the benefit of others, which seems like a good place to start. And everything that's being shared here, so sharing, is all part of that underpinning idea of what kindness is. But why does it matter so much this year? I think this year could be really pivotal in this like kindness revolution that we're looking at. We've obviously got the climate change work that we all need to be undertaking, and which may have taken a slight step back with the removal of the US from the Paris Climate Accord, potentially. There's wars. Obviously, there's the difficult fragile ceasefire in Israel, and then there's Ukraine, and then there's all the other civil wars happening all over the world and wars between people. And then we've got Trump and his rhetoric, the way that his supporters sort of use their language is particularly unkind. And there's other pockets of this around the world, other very far right wing parties who use that same language. So kindness is more important than ever, but it can also seem like more of a challenge. But the reason it's so important is because it strengthens all of our relationships, builds better workplaces, and creates connected communities. All things that came up in the words used in the chat just now. And kindness is a guide that can lead us to a brighter, more fulfilling future. And if we can keep that at heart, I believe we can make a better world, even in the face of all the difficulties. And in fact, we can face up to some of the difficulties through kindness. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about the science of kindness, because kindness, it's not just a nice to have, it's scientifically got basis in why it's so important. First of all, evolutionary, we needed to be kind to those in our tribes and in our networks, because we had to unite against common enemies. You know, if we were out foraging, we needed to have the protection of those around us and the warning signs of things going on around us. And all of that is worked through with kindness, with people connecting, and the biological aspects of kindness, which include releasing oxytocin, so that bonding chemical, When we do acts of kindness, several different things happen. We release oxytocin, we release, we get a dopamine hit, we release serotonin, which is helping us feel good as well. And we also reduce our cortisol levels, and also our blood pressure can go down because of chemicals that help our blood vessels dilate. So it's going to be good for us to be kind. And this is really shown, it's not just on the person doing the kindness. So, for example, I was on a tube and someone got on with a buggy, and the baby and everything. I helped them on, and someone else was watching. They sat down next to me. We had a quick conversation, but it was a shared hello. um, yeah, people joining. It's a shared experience that we bonded over in a very light way, but we bonded over. You know, to be honest, I felt good because I'd done something kind. They felt good because they'd received kind. But the really interesting bit is the people that witnessed it also will have got a boost from it. So when you are being kind or receiving kindness, it's as powerful if you're just witnessing it. And this then, so there was another lady on the train and she smiled. Now, what was much more likely after that happened, that the three of us were going to go off and do something else kind. So that's where it starts to ripple out. The mother with the baby might have been having a really bad day, but hopefully that interaction will have helped her feel better. And then maybe she just opened a door for someone or anything. They don't have to be big things. But then that person that she did that for, they will go off and do something kind. And it ripples and it ripples, and all the people witnessing it, it ripples. Now, what does this mean for our communities? Well, whether it's at work or in society, you know, or in a shop or whatever, the more kindness we do, the more other people will do. And if we're at work and we act kindly, we will be setting it up that other people will be watching what we're doing and receiving it as kindness and feeling better. But we will also bond. So for a team, that's so powerful because we will come together and remember those moments of kindness when things are more difficult. So it builds our resilience as well to withstand as a team things that might be happening around us. And if you reflect on times you've witnessed kindness, have a think about how that's made you feel. How and it can be something as simple as letting someone out of a junction. I don't know if anyone wants to share in the chat something they've experienced recently that was an act of kindness, and it can be little, it can be small. For me, so I just had some milk and I was in Tesco, and the self-service wasn't working for some reason. The queue in front of me was really long. The lady in front of me, who had a massive shop, let me in front. Now, that was a really kind thing to do. She could see I was going to take no time to pay for my milk. And then that made me feel good. And then I almost certainly went and did more kind things. Something I always do is let people out junctions and things like that, just when you can. You know, as long as you're not going to be blocking some other huge junction. But doing things like that can cause that reciprocal ripple effect. So I don't know if anybody wants to share anything they've thought about with kindness. Oh, Amelia.
Yeah, I've got a ongoing slow puncture in my car, so every now and then I have to pump it up. And I was doing it in a car park the other day, and a guy got out of the car next to me and came and asked if I had a flat tire and if I needed any help because he had a pump in the boot of his car. It was very
Oh,
kind of him, and
yeah.
yeah, I thought that was lovely.
Yeah, yeah. And really nothing for it for him on the surface. I mean, now if you know that you're going to get a dopamine hit, it might make you do it more. But yeah, that's a lovely story. And I love these stories. Um, so I'll move on, but do share in the chat anything that comes up, or come put your hand up and come on camera, or not on camera and talk. So the next thing we're going to talk about is building on that, is how we can really spread this kindness. Now, the small things are the big things when it comes to kindness. Kindness doesn't have to be grand gestures. It can be as simple as giving someone your attention and listening actively. And if you don't know what that is that giving someone your full attention, listening to what they say, maybe repeating occasionally what they say so they know you're listening, maybe checking points, but giving people space to just talk. And it may mean putting your phone away. It may mean, if you're on a Zoom call, minimizing your emails or turning your other screen off and just making eye contact and listening. And that can be so powerful for people, particularly if you're a manager. It's one of the top things I would advise anyone working in management to do, is give people your time to listen and let them know you're available to listen. And sometimes you'll be thinking, oh, but I've got my to-do list. But I bet just that fact you've listened actively, you've given someone their time, you've heard what they say, that's the important bit as well. And you might not be able to act on it immediately, but you might then write something, a note down and say, right, I'm going to take what you said, think about it, or go and talk to someone. All of that will actually reap benefits, because you will almost certainly have bonded with that person, built that person, a relationship with that person, but also if you've heard what they say, you might even have solved a problem that would become a bigger work issue as it comes along. It's also offering words of encouragement and saying thank you, taking the time to send that email that says thanks for your work today, even if it seems like it was something small. It could well be that after this, you go onto a Teams call and you just send a little message to someone who did something maybe small, but that helped you a week ago. And just send them a little message and say, I was just thinking about what you did, thank you. Because all of that will ripple out. And it's never too late to make those connections. But also, and something I'm really passionate about, is take care of yourself with your self-kindness, because it all starts here. If you're not kind to yourself, how can you be kind to others? I think that's so important. And that can be putting boundaries in place. I think boundaries and saying no can sometimes be the kindest thing you can do for yourself. It can be actually advocating for yourself. It can be coming to webinars about kindness and other things. It can be making sure that you have protected time to go and do things you enjoy. In research on burnout, particularly by Nick Petrie, he's found that one of the biggest things that helps people is having an opposite world, having something that's outside your workplace that is different to what you do day to day. Now, it could be it's just giving yourself time each day to go for a walk. It could be, as I've found, a love of poetry. It could be well, always had it, but I've been exploring it more. My poetry is my opposite world. It could be, for some people, I know someone who every Friday sits down and writes a chapter of her fiction book. She doesn't know if she'll ever even bother getting it sent off, but that's her opposite world. Now, obviously, different people have different abilities, but allowing yourself that boundary time to do something kind to yourself will help you not burn out as well. And another big plea, if you're a manager, is encourage other people to do this stuff and talk about it and say to people, I am clocking off at 4 because actually I'm going off to play cricket tonight, or which is something someone I know did. And talking about it means other people will feel they can. So you can lead with kindness by demonstrating it and making sure that there's time in people's day to do those things that are their opposite world. Now, it might be, for some people, it's going home and just knowing they've got the time to watch an hour's TV. But knowing you can do it can be so powerful in having those differentiations between work and home. Now, when we think of everyday kindness and we think of the small things you can do, it's really important to remember that it doesn't have to be a big thing, as I just said. Just try smiling at people. That can really help. I recently dyed my hair bright pink, and the number of people, it seemed to be women who appeared to be sort of over 70, would go, oh, I love your hair, you're so brave. But every time they did it, I was like, oh, that's really nice, and some people won't want to do things on appearance and things, but if it's something you know you can genuinely compliment someone on safely, please do it. And it could be a compliment on their work, or it could be a compliment on something they've done out of work. Write those thank you notes, as I said. And actually, if you've got the time to write a handwritten note, we don't do that anymore. How would you feel if you came in one day and there was a little note on your desk, a little, note card or something that said thank you? Probably feel really good. So if that's appropriate, think about doing that. Mentioning going ahead of people, all these are really good examples. Checking in on a friend. Now, recently, I've got a friend who was my absolute best male friend until I haven't seen him since my wedding day. And I've sent him a LinkedIn message because his emails were bouncing back. His phone, he's changed his phone number. I mean, he might have, for some reason, decided never to speak to me again. But actually, I wanted to reach out and say hi because he mattered to me. You can also, donate charity, and that can help with that clutter, the clutter that gets in our heads. And that can be, if we clear space around us, then that physical getting rid of things that no longer serve us can then help make space for things that can, and that might not be physical things. We talk a lot in burnout coaching about clutter circles. So clearing the physical clutter can also help us clear emotional clutter, time clutter. So the things that, we procrastinate on, all of this can ripple out as a kindness to yourself. When it says here about picking up litter, something I've started doing sometimes is taking a bag out with me. So if I do see some litter on my walk, I can pick it up and put it in the bag safely without having to, it's a bit muddy out there at the moment, get too muddy or anything. But think about things like this. You can pay for someone behind you in the queue, or a lot of places you're able to pay for a coffee or some food for someone and pay it forward long term. I go to a coffee shop that's actually in a church, and they've got what they call a blessings jar. So you can put money in it, and then if someone comes in need, or actually if it's a regular's birthday, they sometimes use it, they'll treat them to something. Now, what that does is, again, empowers that kindness. I feel kind because I've put money for a coffee in. The person serving me is kind because they've watched me do it, and then they also feel kind because they can offer it to someone in need, and it all then ripples out. Do encourage and say and express gratitude to your team, and definitely be kind to yourself. So I'm going to ask you now, what one act of kindness can you start with today? Got any thoughts? Think something I'm going to do, which is quite small, is I'm going to treat my son, this is going to make you laugh, to a tuna mayo sandwich from the Co-op, because that's his favourite thing in the world. And it will be an act of kindness to him. So, yeah. Oh, Amelia?
Yeah, I'm going to be mindful of colleagues at work and recognising when I have an opportunity to say thank you, well done, that was really good.
Love it. Please. It'd be lovely to see how that then starts to ripple out. Yeah. I will say, if you work somewhere where that isn't the norm, or a team that isn't the norm, what can sometimes happen is, first of all, a bit of a bounce back of what's going on, but it will work. I mean, I'm sure, Amelia, you're already in there, but for some people, I have seen it where I've done this sort of training with people, and then they've come back to me and gone, my team's a bit thrown because I've started saying thank you to them. Ruth.
Oh, hello. I don't seem to be able to see myself, so I don't know if I look like...
I can see you.
Yeah,
yeah.
Sorry. I've been thinking about this for a while, but I have a lovely elderly neighbour, so I'm going to invite her out for a coffee. I think I'll need to I think I'll need to go and get her because she's a bit doddery on her feet and things. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I love spending time with her, and you know, it is that reciprocal thing that you're talking about. You know, she is elderly but full of life. So I'm going to do that.
That sounds brilliant. That's made me think my mum's best friend from childhood lives down the road, and I should do the same thing with her.
Yeah, it's just easy, isn't it? Because I'd be
Yeah.
going away at some point. So yeah.
Yeah. And the problem is when people are local to you, it can be easy to forget to do it, sort of thing, you know, as well.
True.
Oh, loving these, loving them. So, how about workplace kindness? Well, kindness doesn't have to be these big gestures, as we said. In the workplace, we sort of touched upon it, but it can be so powerful because it can build teams, and it can also build that resilience and that mindset that underpins everything else. So you're at work, and you have to be at work, and you go to work, and you might not want everyone to become your, you know, best friend, but you probably want to enjoy yourself there. And bringing kindness into the workplace can be so powerful because it can improve the well-being of everybody, because you're creating a culture of psychological safety. For example, so psychological safety is where people are safe to fail. They have lots of trust amongst them. They feel that they can voice things and be heard. And kindness underpins all of that. It's much more complex than that. But it also has an aspect of safety for our customers or clients or however we're working, because Amy Edmondson, when she was researching it, so if you want to find out more about psychological safety, Amy Edmondson is the person to look for. And she discovered that she was looking at 2 nursing teams, I think it was, and one of the teams she'd been told got on really well. But she looked at the data, she was like, but they're always making mistakes. And then she looked at another team, which she'd been told didn't work very well. She was like, but they don't make any mistakes. This doesn't make sense. When she dug into the data, the team that didn't make any mistakes actually were making catastrophic things, but they weren't reporting them. They weren't trusting that they were safe enough to say, oh, hang on, I made a mistake. The team who were reporting mistakes, they had loads of mistakes, but actually they weren't very big ones. So on the whole, so they actually were quite safe because they were able to learn from their mistakes. They were able to reflect on their errors, and they trusted each other and they supported each other, and it was really transparent. But also her work has been used by Google. Well, Google started researching what makes a really good team in 2012 as part of Project Aristotle. And in this research, they discovered that this psychological safety is the thing that does it. It makes your teams more innovative. It makes them more creative. If you want a good team, you need to create a world of psychological safety. And that is underpinned by kindness, because every time you treat someone kindly, you're doing all of the chemical things and you're reinforcing those bonds, but you're also going to make them feel safe to fail, safe to make mistakes, safe to voice concerns. And then they'll be able to be innovative, because they can say, I've had this idea, and that idea might be a little bit off the wall, but someone else goes, but actually we could take that idea and it could turn into this, and it can ripple out. So you want kind workplaces because you want places that come together around kindness. And this is where kind leaders really come into their own, because they can really affect how a team works and how it comes together. Because if we have leaders who are very dictatorial, or might be very micromanagement style managers as well, leaders and managers who act in a not untrusting way will be undermining their team all the time, and their team won't feel safe. But also with their well-being, as part of well-being, is one of the things we need is some autonomy. And if you work somewhere where you have to check everything with your manager, how your manager gets any of their work done, I don't know. But also, you'll start to doubt yourself, and you will start to feel like you don't have any, you can't ask, a question, or actually just go off and have your hour's lunch break, because you're going to be watched. Things like that can be a real barrier to team and individual growth and well-being. And if you reflect on places where you've seen workplaces that don't work, that is often part of it. They lack that psychological safety and that kindness. Almost every time in recent times where we've had a big scandal in the press, like the post office scandals and various other ones, when you really start listening to it with that kindness and psychological safety lens, you can see that's lacking. That's not in that system. And it's a system error as much as individuals within that system. And when I work with some organisations, what I see is the people who are at the top have succeeded in that system. So they've succeeded maybe without ever working from home, which then may well benefit certain groups of people. They've succeeded in systems where anyone who might have made a mistake may have been put to one side. So why would they want to change it? But then that will ripple down. And I've had people in their 20s who said to me, well, I had to work when I started out, you know, straight from uni. They're in their late 20s. I had to work till 10 at night and come in at 6 in the morning. Literally, there are organisations in the UK where that is still expected amongst, particularly amongst people starting out. So I don't see why this new person is actually saying they want to leave on time. This new graduate. Actually, maybe the new graduate's got the right idea by putting in those boundaries, because I can bet the amount of work and productivity they do is probably not that different. Because if you're exhausted, I think we all know, if you're exhausted, you're not going to work to your best. So that's where that kindness comes in, that self-reflection on ourselves. And that's why it's difficult to be kind, because we sometimes have to go, oh, hang on, that might have served me, but it's not going to serve other people. And I don't know if anyone saw recently, but a former head of Marks and Spencer's earlier this week again said we have to all be back in the office. He was someone who clearly that had worked for them, and it's not going to work now. Probably, just making an assumption here, in his generation, it's quite likely he never did anything at home. And he had a wife and systems at home who did everything at home. Nowadays, most people are either, if they're single, they've got to do it all. But even if they're in a couple, they are likely to be sharing stuff. Nobody has that support system that means that that way of working can work. So worth thinking about that as well. But how can we make kindness a habit? Because we do need to make it a habit so it can ripple out. Well, a few tips I would say is reflect on one kind act you could do today. So when you get up, think about it. You can write it down if you want. That's not everyone's intention. It can sometimes, writing down, that physical writing or drawing of something can help you cement it sort of neurodynamically. But yeah, think, what am I going to do today? Maybe it's just saying thank you to someone. Maybe it's taking in some food or something for someone. Maybe it's inviting your neighbour out for a walk or something. And then at the end of the day, and I would say write this down, write down kind actions you've done and received each day, because journaling is so powerful for building up a foundation of positivity that can then spin up into a sort of, so it starts with the foundation and it just keeps spinning into building more positivity. Barbara Fredrickson talks about this, and she talks about how we need these building blocks to grow and to be able to sustain our work and our kindness and our well-being in times of difficulty. It's a broaden and build is the theory, that if we do these things, they will help us have this broad basis, and that applies at work as well. All of this you can then translate to work. Kind workplace will have that broaden, and then it will build up from there. You can create a reminder. So for some people, it might just be having something on your phone alerts you, or a note. Or for other people, they'll stick a little note on their mirror as they do their teeth or their makeup or whatever. And some people I know have it on their dashboard, just a little note that says something like "be kind," or offer to help, or something, or say thank you. If we share our kindness goals with friends and colleagues, it can help us stay motivated. So this is where in workplaces can be quite powerful, because sometimes we might have a kindness wall where we might actually pin up things that we're going to try and do, or to say thank you to people, or going into a team meeting and at the start or at the end go round and say, is there anyone in this room you want to say thank you to? And see what comes up, because I bet there is, and it might be small, it might be big, but I bet there are. Also recognise the positive impact of even smallest kind gestures. So that's celebrating the small wins, and again, acknowledging it. If you really want to make a habit of anything, then tie it with daily activity, so you can habit stack things. So if you want to start buying a coffee forward, just always tie it to one particular place that you buy a coffee. Or it might be smiling at a stranger on your commute, or making an effort to have a conversation with someone. Gillian Sandstrom, who was one of our lecturers, some of you will know, does a lot of work around weak ties and the conversations we have with weak ties, improving our well-being as well as being kinder, and having a conversation with the person that makes you your coffee in the morning, or bus drivers, or in my case, I chat to anybody, people on bus stops, and so on, will just help, again, ripple out that kindness. All habits should start small, because if you set yourself some sort of target, like I'm going to thank 20 people today, you almost certainly won't manage it every day. But if you say, I'm going to say thank you today, that will start well. And any habit we build should start in a way that we can then build on. So have a think about one way you could make kindness a daily habit, or one way you already are. So anyone want to share how kindness can be a daily habit? Yeah, Amelia.
Yeah, I don't always I kind of do it the other way around, because at the end of the day I do a kind of gratitude practice,
yeah.
and when I do that, I always also think of at least one kind thing I've done.
Love it.
And they really vary, but most days I can usually think of at least one or two things that I've done. And I suppose a regular one, it's not daily, but when I go to the supermarket now, I always buy something for the food bank.
That is an excellent one, isn't it? Yeah, that is a brilliant one. How do you feel now that you've got this as a habit? Is it
good? And I'm recognizing the benefits of it, and it is like the kind of practicing it regularly. It's like muscle memory, isn't it? That you kind of, and you develop those pathways, and that broad foundation you were talking about. It's less different and unusual, and it's more part of who I am and how I am.
Yeah. I'm quite interested in habits, and I was reading about Duolingo. Now I might have got this slightly wrong, but I've got a nice good streak on Duolingo, but I have sometimes used my streak freezes. And they found that because you can streak freeze for a day or two, but after that you lose your streak. And that's because they discovered if you let people go for 3 days, they won't come back. But if you let people go for 1 or 2 days, that is fine for a habit, because we all have a reason sometimes to miss something. Do you find that with your journaling, that occasionally you're too tired, you might do it the next day or something?
Yeah, I do, and I'm okay with the fact that there will be times when that's how I feel, rather than, and that feels more beneficial for me, being realistic about it, than making myself sit and write something just so I can tick the box and say I've done it today.
Yeah, that makes sense, totally. And there's a comment in the chat I'm a Christian. When we pray as a family almost daily, we always speak of the things we're grateful for. The kids' prayers are the sweetest. Oh, I bet they are. I bet they're lovely. Something we do at dinner time. Now our youngest is 4 and can join in, is similar, is we go round and talk about something we're grateful for and something that went well. And if one of the children starts to say, oh, this went wrong, I listen and everything and digest it, and then I'll try and flip it and say, what else went well? You know, just to try and get the brain into remembering that there's always often something good. Otherwise, you can do the opposite, that broaden and build and disappear down into a hole. Yeah, and I could do a whole presentation on negativity bias, but we won't. So we talked about this throughout, this ripple effect of kindness, and that kindness starts small but doesn't stay small. So if you think of me letting that person onto the tube, and then that person goes and helps someone else, and they help someone else, and then the people witnessing it, you are rippling out quite quickly how kindness can spread across a team or an organization or a community. And this ripple effect is then how we can really create that transformational change. For example, a teacher might encourage a struggling student who later gains the confidence to come back and mentor others. And I've worked in universities, and that's something we hear quite a lot. Students who've had a difficult point in their degree journey, who then, once they graduate, actually want to come and give back. And then the people they're mentoring are getting amazing things from it. And then they often will become mentors. And that ripple effect can be really powerful. Or a colleague supports a team member having a really difficult time, and then that can lead to a more cohesive team dynamic. I was reading, I think it was on Twitter, someone was sharing, they were a teacher, and in their first or second year of teaching, they had a really bad year. Something had gone wrong in their life, and they were coming in and teaching. I think they were a primary teacher, and one much older colleague, like nearing retirement end of the sort of career, every day came and gave them a cup of tea, and that was all they did. And over the time, that incrementally by sort of 1% improved. Then they start chatting to them, and this person said this kept them in teaching, because that one act of kindness, knowing someone was there. They also had helped them go to the car one day because they got really upset, and they helped them. And the fact that this person was tweeting about it 20 odd years later shows that small act of kindness rippling through. And then she shared that she actually has in her classroom a chair that this person gave her when she retired. And she said wherever she goes to teach, wherever she lives, she will always have this chair because it represents this act of kindness. So she didn't say, but I imagine she, because she remembers that, she has done similar things. But also sometimes it can be a stranger's kind act that then inspires someone else to do something. Now, you mentioned putting things in the food bank box. Actually, I've also found when I've seen someone do it, it's reminded me to do it. You know, it makes you go, oh, yeah, food bank. And at my son's school, when it's Harvest Festival time, they make a big thing about it going to the food bank. And then they also do a reverse advent calendar at Christmas. So they're teaching those children to be kinder. Now, what ripple effects do you think I'm just going to go to the next slide. What ripple effects can small acts create? Can you think of one area of your life where you could start a ripple today, or where you've experienced that ripple? I actually quite like the food bank. Yeah, you've reminded me to consciously do that. Yeah, Nicola.
One thing I'm kind of becoming more mindful of is when either in a social situation or a work meeting or situation is when somebody says something that then sets an instant, oh, we're not going to do that, that's terrible, that's awful, that ripple effect, I'm always mindful to then take sort of 3 breaths and think about what I'm going to say next, because it's quite easy for everyone to sort of jump on that, oh yes, that's terrible, how dare they, and before you know it, there's a real sort of negative or difficult sense in that social interaction. So my ripple effect is always to stop and think, am I just contributing to the noise, or am I saying something that means something? Am I being kind? Have I got all the information? So it's that kind of 3 breaths before I speak thing.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
kind of something that I'm trying out a lot.
I love that. That's really good advice. And it's, yeah, advice I would give people is don't always jump on the like bandwagon. And meeting, it can happen so easily because you get caught up. And also, something I'm really mindful of when I'm in meetings or networking events in my new life is making sure everybody has had the chance to reflect and talk, because some of us think while we're talking and it's, you know, we can take over, but there's a lot of people where it's the opposite. They need some time to digest, to reflect, just as you're doing those 3 breaths, that sort of moment of, okay, actually this is what I think, or this is not quite as off the wall as it sounded at first or something, and making sure that though everybody's been given the opportunity to talk, which is quite powerful. Yeah, Amelia.
Yeah, another one I was thinking of, and you had it on one of your earlier slides, was just as simple as smiling at people.
Oh yeah.
And this happens in the workplace quite a lot, but I've also noticed it, maybe it's more impactful in, I'm thinking of the supermarket. You must think I spend all my time shopping. But I noticed lots of people in the supermarket aren't smiling, and they're concentrating on their shopping list and thinking about 100 things, and you get in each other's way with trolleys, or you want something off the shelf where they are. And people don't smile, and when you smile at them, they absolutely smile back, and you can almost see them being taken by surprise. And when that happens, it then encourages me more to smile at the next person or at the next opportunity. And I hope it encourages them to smile at other people who are equally busy and rushed and stressed and in the middle of doing a task and running late and all the other stuff that's going on.
I bet it does. It almost certainly does. Yeah. So Ruth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we recently got a puppy, which is very exciting. We used to be dog owners, and actually I was remarking to my husband again at just, you know, I'd carried on walking locally in our area and walking in the park, but how making eye contact with people who think that our puppy's very cute, she is very cute, but you know, it just is, it's an opening, it's a doorway to just having a very, like that you were saying about the weak ties, Gillian's weak ties, it's just having a conversation that's super brief, but actually it is, and it is, Amelia, you know, it gets people smiling, and well, the dog lovers anyway, you know, but it is, and it's been so sweet, and we sort of forgot that, you know, that yeah, it's an opportunity maker, having a dog, which is funny.
Yes, so true. So very true. I haven't got a dog, but if I'm taking my 4-year-old out, who is a bit like a spaniel, you know, he needs a run every day. And if I take him out, we often stop and talk to dogs. And it's a lovely, you can just say, oh, what's his name? You know, in a way that you wouldn't say to the person you're walking past, what's your name? And it's things like that. It's really nice. And again, it's a bit like Amelia. You always see that smile and that like joy. And you're going to think I spend a lot of time in supermarkets as well. But I often go to Lidl, and often you find people in Lidl who aren't used to Lidl, and they go in and they're like standing there going, I've been sent in, particularly before Christmas, I've been sent in to get this, and they're standing there really lost. And I'll always say, oh, what are you looking for? Because I know where everything is. I could go and work there. I don't. But I, you know, and I go, oh, they're over there, or oh, you might need to ask because I didn't see them over there, and things like that. And hopefully, I'm either looking like a mad person or they are very grateful. But I think usually they're pretty grateful. Yeah, I don't know why Lidl, you seem to get people sent in to get things more than you do everywhere else. But all of this helps us build connections. So both that taking a step and a breath, and actually going out and saying hello and things can really help us create bonds. Now, the power of connection really lies in how we show up for each other. So every kind word, every action will create lasting bonds. And there's lots of ways to do this. Now, we've talked about active listening, so giving that full attention to others. This is why doing courses on coaching as a way of, as a manager, or I'm doing one for librarians soon, can be so powerful, because it underpins those skills of giving people your full attention. Acknowledging people and thanking them also builds those connections, and also inclusivity. Now, I don't know, I'm sure you all saw this move by Mark Zuckerberg to get rid of DEI from his world. That really was a gut punch to me, because that's very unkind, because we need to make sure that all voices are heard, that all experiences are heard, and include others in conversations and activities. And sometimes that can be exactly what Nicola said about taking some breaths in a meeting, so you make sure everybody's included. It can be actually advocating for people, or giving people the confidence to advocate for themselves. I remember a story by Sheryl Sandberg, ironically from the Facebook world at one point, and she was talking about how, I think it was when she was at Google, she was pregnant and she used to drive into the car park, and she'd end up having to park miles away because she'd been sick, she was late because of appointments and things. And she went to the founders and said, we need parking spaces for pregnant people. They had disabled spaces, so that was there, but we also need spaces for pregnant people, or people who've been, delayed because of other things. And they put them in, because actually that was a very low cost, very easy thing to do. But she said they hadn't thought of it, because they were men and they'd never been pregnant, and they had all the privilege that came with their role, which meant they had their own spaces and stuff. But she noticed it because she was a woman, but she was able to advocate it because she had a seat at the table, because she was high enough up she could do it. But not everyone is going to have that voice. So part of inclusivity is enabling others to have that voice. So building that psychological safety, listening to people, and maybe sometimes doing the feedback for them. But I could do a whole thing on DEI, but it is fundamental to how we succeed. Something we brought in when I worked at Westminster was sending out interview questions and interview packs for people applying for jobs. And it started off in a conversation with an employee who'd come to us through an autism accessibility scheme. And then he was able to say to us, well, we were able to have conversations with him about his interview experience. And then we realised actually it would just help everybody. If we send out the questions, it levels the playing field. No one's going to be surprised. It means people who are internal aren't having an unfair advantage. They can choose whether or not to do it. But we also did a pack that included photos of the panel, a little bit about the panel. It included, if it was on site, it included photos of how to get there. So like a photo of the entrance, a photo of who to ask, and so on. And it built up took away that barrier. And the inclusivity from it was that actually it was inclusive for everybody. It particularly benefited neurodiverse applicants. It would have benefited them, but actually it benefited everybody else. It was really simple thing to do. But it takes a bit, we had to change, argue with HR and things about it. But we did. So sometimes the inclusive thing is going to benefit everybody as well. But it's also going to make your clients, your customers, your users all feel so much more included if you make an effort to be inclusive. Also, look for opportunities to support someone who might need assistance or encouragement, and open up and be authentic. So vulnerability can really foster those deep connections and build that psychological safety, particularly if you're a leader. Now, part of the reason I'm doing this today is because we are living in quite uncertain times, and we have been for quite a long time. But we do need to try and stay optimistic whilst being kind to ourselves. So the diagram I've shared there is there's circles of control, and it's always worth remembering you can control your actions, you can control your thoughts, you can control yourself, you can influence your work environment, the community involvement and relationships, and kindness will help you do that. But we have to accept that we have little or no influence on other people's opinions, global events, and the weather. And accepting that can help us ripple out the kindness whilst being kind to ourselves, because it can give us something to have a boundary about. You know, we might be sitting there and watching some of the things that are being talked about and getting angry, but actually, what's that anger going to do? But could we double up a kindness effort to, you know, put an extra tin in the food bank or something like that? And that might help ripple out the kindness more within our circle of control. And part of that is also speaking kindly to yourself. So learn, the person you talk to most is yourself, and learn to speak kindly to yourself. Now, focusing on what you can influence can really help, and taking those positive actions, as we discussed. So try and surround yourself with uplifting people and stories of kindness. Now, there's a wonderful, wonderful feed on Instagram called Time for Kindness by Sarah Browning, who is going to be doing a webinar for us. And it's all about stories of kindness and noticing kindness. And sometimes if you just want a little boost, go and have a look at it. She's got a website and things as well. And I'll put a note in the, when I send this out to attendees and stuff, and in the YouTube notes about this. It's all about noticing kindness, reading about it can help you feel better. Just remembering there's kind things out there. And celebrate that good happening around you, and remind yourself of the resilience and the fact we have survived a lot in the past, and that kindness is really powerful. So my final thought is, let's make 2025 a year of kindness. Take action, commit to one act of kindness daily, and encourage others in your workplace or community to do the same, would be my final thought. Anyone got any questions or things to talk about? And then I'm going to share something quickly. Yeah. Oh, Amelia and Ruth have signed.
Go ahead, Amelia.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Really, really lovely session, and very relevant and timely. Yeah, I was just struck because this morning while I was getting ready for work, I had the breakfast news on, and they were talking about some research that's just been published that I've just looked it up. So the Oxford University Press do a thing every year with children, and they've just released the results. Children have come up with their top word for 2024 as kindness.
I need to look that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the two that came behind it were artificial intelligence and conflict, but kindness won.
Kindness won.
I'll put a link in the chat.
Oh, please do. Yeah, and then I'll share it. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm going to look that up.
Amelia, I was going to say the exact same thing. My husband alerted me to it today. It was I don't know what he was doing, reading CBBC News or Newsround, but he'd read the same thing, and yeah, I thought that was really lovely. So I'll be highlighting that with my kids as well tonight.
Oh, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I might send some emails to local schools as well and say, do you want me to come and spread some kindness? Yeah. Nicola.
I think you're right, Helen. It's
Yeah.
feeling like a movement
Yes, yes.
more and more, which they
Yeah,
needed to.
yeah. I'll tell you a minute about my Kindness Unite stuff in a second. Nicola.
I was just going to say thank you, Helen, and thank you
Oh.
to everybody for such a lovely afternoon. What's really interesting is I was reading some of the work that you mentioned about the opposite world, and that really sort of spoke to me. And what's really interesting is that something that's kind of my opposite world, I would say, is meditation and meditating and that sort of thing. And when we've got a meditation group and we follow various practices around meditation and the way that we live our lives. And what's really interesting is that and the workplace and the kindness values is kind of coming together. Like a lot of the conversations we've had today are very similar to the conversations I have in my meditation group.
Love it.
And then I went to a conference, a professional conference in London, and there was a speaker speaking about environmental sustainability in buildings, libraries, etc. And they put up a screen of books that had inspired them, and one of them was the person who leads the meditation that we do, and it was so weird. It was all coming together,
Oh,
and
I love it.
and I think that's what's so interesting, how there's something changing, isn't there, in the workplace and in the world, and the fact that these two sort of that have been quite separate things. It was, you have to be this kind of person in the workplace and this kind of person outside. It's coming together, and I'm loving it. So thank you very much, everybody.
You might find the work of, I'll put you a link in the thing, the work of David Hamilton quite interesting, because he talks about kindfulness, as in it's bringing together mindfulness meditation with kindness, and and meditation is proven, and mindfulness are both proven to improve compassion. So if you bring it into the workplace, you will create a more compassionate workplace. And I'm finding more people are I'm delivering a training to a library quite soon, which will have some guided visualization in it. And it's the first time they were like, we're brave enough to try that. And I'm like, that's really interesting. To move things forward. Just going to quickly tell you about Kindness Unites. So Kindness Unites is going to have webinars, but I've also called it Mastermind, but really it's a group where I'm bringing people together, £20 a month, and we have group coaching and some co-working, and I'm just trying to build a community to really push this kindness out. So I will just flag that there, and I'll put a link in and stuff, with the idea that it's to keep, so you can keep on track with any kindness goals, and I will talk about my kind goal setting thing that I've created. What's it called? Like instead of SMART goals, kind goals. And I will and we will sometimes have maybe people come in to talk about particular things or share ideas, and I'm really passionate that we can really start this revolution going. Yes, so there we are. There's my little advert. But thank you all, and I will send out the video and share it lots of places and stuff. So,
Thank you, Helen.
thank you, everybody.
Good stuff.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your
Nice to
time.
meet you.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.